So this is a talk about managing your AI-driven manager, and I kind of have it divided up where I want to talk about basic principles of building a constructive loyalty relationship with your manager that gets you what you want in your job, your career, in your life. And then after that, then we're going to look at the specifics of this rise of AI and how that strongly impacts the relationship. Because all the advice I'm going to suggest based on the AI changes are still dependent on the basic relationship building that you do with your manager in order to get what you need. Okay? I'm going to get back at you at some point. I don't know when, but okay. Let's get started on this. By the way, there's my contact information, and how much you loving this screen? Do you believe that? How nice that is? I tore everything down after the last talk yesterday, put up this thing by the morning. I can see it now. It's great. And I spent all these hours changing my font sizes. Anyway, feel free to contact me. It's Ken Kousen, like the relative. There's my email address, homepage, blog. I still have a Twitter handle, though I don't use it much. I'm on Mastodon. I have a free weekly newsletter called Tales from the Jar Side, comes out every Sunday. And I have a YouTube channel of the same name there, and those are the books from before. Let's move on. Okay, now I had to do this. I've been following the chess challenge, the candidates tournament, and I imagine some of you at least were rooting for Vidit, of course. Yep, some. And of course, then we have Pragnananda and his sister Vaishali, and who knows, someday maybe you'll have two brother and sister world champions. It could happen. They both did remarkably well. Vaishali had trouble for a while and then won the last 5 in a row. It was amazing for that. And Prag, of course, did a very good job. But of course, the candidates tournament was won by Gukesh, making him the youngest challenger for the World Championship ever. Now, I told my wife I was going to bring up all this, and she's like, you know, that is really a cheap way to get applause. And I said, no, you don't understand. The GIDS audience is by far way too intelligent, sophisticated, and let's be honest, attractive to fall for such obvious pandering, right? Wouldn't you agree? Yeah, okay, very good. So whatever else happens, I started off on a good note. Okay, let's move on. Now, I want to talk about the relationship that you build with your manager, and I want to point out something that is reality, but we tend not to think about. We try to not deal with this. And it's the fact that conflict with your manager is absolutely inevitable because the two of you want different things. We don't think about that, but because the jobs are different, then the goals and the priorities are different. You know, so let's start with, well, what do you want? Now, there's lots of things you could say about that, but I'm going to focus on what you want out of your career. And for most developers that I know, what they want is a career that provides a certain degree of autonomy, the ability to choose what you're doing and how to do it, some flexibility, you know, choose the tools and techniques and everything, and allows you to play to your strengths, to do things you do well, while still giving you an opportunity to fill in the things that you don't know and keep changing, like all this AI stuff that gives you an opportunity to learn about it and move on. And that all sounds good. Now, those, by the way, are all what they call intrinsic motivations. These are things that come from within you. That's partly why it's so hard for companies to come up with an adequate compensation plan, because that's external. It's not that we don't care about the external stuff, but most of what really drives professionals is intrinsic motivations. And I'll define that term professional shortly, but it overlaps degrees, but it's not directly the same thing. I mean, I've met many people who I consider professionals who had, flight attendants and plumbers and, wait staff at restaurants. It can be anybody like that. Now, the assumption I'm making here is that you are some sort of working professional, which means you care about your career and doing the job in whatever the right way is, however you qualify that, building results that you can be proud of, that you're happy to produce, that earn respect and reward. So there are some things that come from outside, of course, but anybody can be a professional. It doesn't necessarily correlate with certifications or degrees or accomplishments. In fact, one of the things you really learned from getting all this academic training is the limits of academic training. You really do understand what you know and what you don't know in a lot of all of that. Now, what does your manager want? That's the thing we have to figure out. If we're going to build a relationship, the question is, how do we build a mechanism so that they get what they need and we get what we need? We want to talk about, if you're going into the mathematical approach, a non-zero sum game, a game where both sides can win and both sides can lose, but still, we're going to go for the winning side of it. That's the idea. I mean, don't they want the same things? And the answer mostly boils down to yes, but only if those things make money. And by money, I don't mean salary or anything like that. I mean money for the company. Because managers, even the low-level managers that we typically deal with, have to focus on money. They are, in fact, evaluated based on these other principles, on the cost of everything they're doing. And then later, when we get to the AI stuff, I'm going to add another feature that's a little different with management. They also care about risk a lot. And when you're moving into a new field like AI, risks are all over the place there. Your manager's evaluated differently from the way we are, and therefore their priorities and incentives, as they say, are different from ours. Now, I like to draw a Venn diagram. What the heck? You have an agenda for your job, for your career, for your life, what you want to accomplish. And your manager also has an agenda for their job, their career, their life as well. Now, we try to operate in the overlap. If there's no overlap, why are we working together in the first place? And that is something that you will continually be assessing during your job. It's like, is this relationship worth salvaging? Is this something that's going to be productive? So you look for where the overlap is. But we have to acknowledge that the other chances still occur. There are things that we do that fit our objectives that don't necessarily do what the manager wants, and vice versa. I mean, just to pick a random example, say you come to a conference like this and you learn about some new technique or new framework or new approach to development, something that you didn't know before, and you go, well, you know what, I'm going to go to my manager and say, hey, I just learned about this. Thanks, for sending me to the conference. I want to use this on our current project. And the manager is going to be listening to that going, okay, I know they have no experience in this at all. They don't know all the problems that could come up. We're introducing a significant factor of risk to our existing project. That project's on the critical path. Yeah, I don't know. That's going to be a hard sale. Okay, so you might consider, and I'm going to keep this vague because, plausible deniability and all of that, you might consider doing the project, quote, on your own time. I'll carve off a little piece, I'll work on it after work or during lunch or whatever, and I'll see if I can make it work. Of course, on your own time kind of creeps into work time. After all, it is a work project anyway. And let's pick the happy path. Let's say it all works. That, yeah, you work out all the problems and you do great. Then it's time to go, okay, you know what, I'm going to have a lunch and learn or some meeting with the team and show them what I did. Hey, I just used Vue.js, or I did native browser approaches to JavaScript now, or I used Kotlin and I'd never used it before, or I applied an AI tool that I'd never done here. And of course, when you're reporting it, you minimize all the challenges you went through, all the problems you faced, because nothing worth doing is easy. It always takes some extra effort the first time you do it. And let's again stay on the happy path. The manager's reaction to this is, oh, cool. Great, now I've got a new capability in the team that I can market or sell, and we've got this extra capability in the project, it's all working great. But there's some issues here. First of all, you did something on your own that the manager didn't even know about. And secondly, the manager's like, okay, now we have a problem because you're the only one who can maintain this code now. You're the only one who knows how this works. So the manager thinks, I'll tell you what, let's take a junior member of the team, somebody who's real raw and inexperienced, and I'll assign them to you and say, okay, you teach them what you did. Bring them up to speed because, if you get busy or you're not available, then we've got them to fill in for you. And of course, what you hear is, as a reward for doing all this extra work and doing something cool, you're now there to train your own lower cost, probably more flexible replacement. Right? In other words, both sides did things that were perfectly reasonable from their goals and objectives point of view, and you're already in a conflict. See, it wasn't personal. It wasn't trying to say there was a problem. It was just identifying a situation where both sides follow their incentives and wind up in a problem. I'll come back to that situation. Now, there's an added complication that happens to us as developers, and that is we are not in the managerial hierarchy. So the managers we deal with are the low end of the totem pole. In other words, your manager's probably not very good at their job. Now, that may be because they're not skilled, but it may be just they're raw, they're new at it. Maybe they were so good at the technical job that they wound up getting promoted into a completely unrelated job for which they have no training and no background, right? It could be that. Maybe they're just not good at it yet. So as technical people, as I say, we're not on the management hierarchy, and I'm talking primarily about hierarchical organizations where there is a hierarchy. And when I say manager, I don't mean like a tech lead. Anyone in here could be a tech lead, may have been many times. That's different because tech leads and developers have similar goals. We are evaluated a lot the same way. It's just a tech lead is handling a project bigger than they could do alone. A manager, by my definition, is someone who makes decisions about raises and promotions and assignments, that sort of thing. Somebody who has a direct impact on your career, whether they have the title or not, okay? But that means, since we're dealing with the lowest rung, we get the rookies, the least experienced and the least proficient. You're aware that to get a technical job, you have to have degrees or certifications or experience. The sieve to getting into a technical job happens before you're hired. You're weeded out before you even get to that point. In management, it's different. Lots of people are promoted into the lowest rung of management. Who gets training? Who gets sent to the executive MBA program? Only the managers who've made it up a few rungs and may someday reach the so-called C-level suite, the executive levels. In other words, they're willing to bring in 10 managers to keep 2. It's very different. My wife was, she's retired now, but she was an attorney. And law school was like that. They'd bring in 3 to keep 1. But in engineering school, if you got in, they expected you to pass, expected you to complete it. It was a question of whether you were going to work hard enough and all of that. It wasn't like, no, there's too many. Now, I know many of you have experience with schools that were not like that, where they brought in lots and didn't expect to keep everybody. I'm saying management is more like that. It's more like, okay, we'll just throw them into the fire and see what happens. And if it turns out they're good at it, then we'll give them the training that they so desperately needed, other than some weekend seminar and a pep talk, something like that. So another complication, by the way, is everybody in an organization has to act like they know what they're doing. Now, I don't mean you have to lie, but you have to present enough confidence that people will trust you with their projects. That they'll say, yeah, here's my project, here's my money, I trust that you'll get it done somehow. Now, we all experience uncertainty, fear, all of these things. I'm not going to say necessarily imposter syndrome. That's a term that gets bandied about, but that's got a specific definition. That's a dysfunction where you feel like you're about to be discovered or everything. Yeah, I'm not talking about an extreme like that. I'm just talking about the fact that as professionals, you are constantly faced with problems that you've never done before, even if they're only slightly different. See, if the problem is the same thing you've done 100 times, why are they paying for a professional? They could give that to anybody. That could be a training project for a kid or something like that. No, we are constantly faced with problems that we haven't done, and therefore we're constantly faced with situations where we don't know what we're doing. And of course you get worried. One of the keys in building the relationship with your manager is so that when you vent about the difficulties you're having, learning what you need to do and doing your project, your manager has to know you well enough to know the difference between, yeah, they're just venting, it's a normal part of the learning process, whatever, and we have a real problem here, I need to step in. And the only way they're going to know that is if you build a relationship. Likewise, you have to know when your manager is saying things to you and you're going,